So it looks like we have about 11 people. So it is 10:15, so we'll go ahead and get started so that we have ample time for questions at the end. My name is Tina Fletcher, and I'll be the moderator. I'm an ASU faculty member. So I'll be watching the chat and helping just to keep time for everybody. But I'm going to go ahead and let Katie introduce herself and her team, and they can take it from here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our school spotlight. We know you've had a full few days of learning, and we're excited that you decided to join here to learn a little bit more about the Creighton Academy. So my name is Katie Cartier, and I have the honor of being the first and only principal of the Creighton Academy. I'm joined today by several people who this school really would not be this vision that we are realizing without them. So my right hand, Samantha Rodas, is our instructional coach. I also have part of our 4th and 5th grade covey. So we have Miss Perla Flores, who teaches math and Spanish, and then Miss Janessa Klutz, who teaches English language arts, and they both do some of that PBL work together, which you'll learn more about. So today you're going to learn a little bit about who we are, our teaming model, and then how we deepen and personalize learning for our students and for our staff. So who are we? Well, we can't talk about who we are without talking a little bit about where we've come from. So the land for the Creighton School was donated by the Creighton family in April of 1884. Creighton School was originally called Goosetown School because it was located in a farm area where there was squawking of many geese, and that gave rise to the name. From there, Creighton School became renamed as Creighton School. Oops, sorry about that. And it was determined, and it remained as that until it was determined that we needed a new building and a new design. So a set of architects came into the original Creighton School students, and they said, what do you want in a school? And they gave them little blocks, and they constructed their own school. And that is why some of our features are here, like slides that are inside the building. That is something that was important to them. And as we thought about the school for the future, they created a design committee, and that was comprised of our superintendent, Dr. Donna Lewis, several community members, family members, architects, and different, even kids in the surrounding area. And things that were said in the committee were, we want a biliterate school. So we want kids to be learning in English and in Spanish. We want school to be fun and engaging for kids. We want things to be hands-on for them, and we want them to be ready for the future. So in short, we really want to create a school full of adventurous thinkers, collaborative learners, and kind-hearted leaders. Last year, we opened virtually, not the plan, for the first time. And then this year, we call it really our very first year of opening in person. So our school at a glance. We purposely incubated the idea of our vision because we knew it was so different than anything else on a really small scale. So we're sitting at around 300 students in kindergarten through 6th grade. We are a small public school of choice within the Creighton School District in Phoenix, Arizona. 85% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. 12% of our students have individualized education plans, and 23% of our students are English language learners. At the Creighton Academy, every student is a member of a covey. So that's a multi-age group of 55 to 60 students. And students work with educators that are specific to their covey. For example, every covey has their own literacy teacher and then their own math teacher who teaches math in Spanish. They also get to work with educators across coveys. So those are our small group teachers, our special area teachers. And then additionally, we have Mary Lou Fulton teacher candidates. We have para educators, reading interventionists, and coaches. And all of these people wrap around our students to create the best learning experience for them. So our vision and mission, we really didn't even create this until we were finished with our first full year last year. We got students together to talk about what is our vision for the school. We got staff members, we reached out to families and community members, and we often use the word co-construct, and it truly is a constant process. We say that we fail forward. So there is no growth without failure, and we continue to fail forward. And we have 4 components to our school. So we are a multi-age school. We believe that there are better ways to group kids than just by whether they were born in September or October. So we do some grouping in based on when they were born. We do some grouping based on their grade level. We do some based on their ability or their interests. And from there, another benefit to our multi-age is that we have students who are in the higher technical grade levels who are mentors to our younger students constantly. We also are a dual language program. So the goal of that is to have a 50-50 model of English and Spanish and to make biliterate kids. Right now, we, speaking of failing forward, we attempted it for kindergarten all the way through 6th grade, and we found that we needed to scale back a little bit. So we are 50-50 in K3, and then we're at about 80-20 in our other grade levels, and we'll roll up. That's our plan every year until we are fully 50-50 immersion model. We're also a project-based school. So what that means is that we believe that we do not need kids who are rote memorizers who can do one thing really well over and over and over. In the future of education, we truly need problem seekers and problem solvers. And that is what project-based learning does. And you'll hear more about that later. And then finally, we're an open, flexible learning environment. So as you visit our school, you'll see we really don't have any doors or windows on our learning environment, which sounds so odd, and it works so well for us. Not only you've heard of flexible seating, we have flexible environments. So kids may advocate for themselves and say, I really need to learn in this space right now. We teach kids what spaces work better for different things, and then they go to those spaces. On a day-to-day basis, you may see kids learning on the conversation stairs. You may see a small group out in the hallway, and you may see kids sitting on the floor inside one of the learning environments. So from there, I'm going to toss the ball over to our instructional coach, Ms. Samantha Rodas, to talk about teaming.
Yes, I am so excited to talk to you about how we team to support our educator teams and also to support our students and deepen their learning experience. So the first thing I'd like to show you is just kind of a graphic that might help you visualize what we're talking about when we talk about a cubby, or sometimes we call them houses. Our early years house, that's all of our kinder and first grade students and all of our educators who serve students in those grade levels. And this is a graphic of those people. And they're divided up into 2 cubbies, just based on our enrollment. We have enough students for 2 of those groups of about 60 students that Ms. Cartier was mentioning before. So each cubby has their dedicated math instructor that's a certified teacher who teaches in Spanish. And then they have their dedicated literacy teacher who is a certified teacher that teaches in English. And they each teach a core content block, and then they collaborate on our inquiry-based instruction, project-based learning, and other elements of our instructional day. And then they work together with other members of our team, including teachers in residence from ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teacher College. We're very fortunate to have a strong partnership with them, and many teachers in residence on our teams. We have paraprofessionals who also are highly qualified and support in the learning environments, as well as those small group instructors and shared reading interventionists, special education teachers, people who support across cubbies that you can kind of see in the center of this Venn diagram here. Next, I'd like to also try to give you a visual of what this might look like throughout a day for our students and for our educators. So during our core content blocks, the cubby is split into 2 groups. So those 60 students, about 30 of them are with their math instructor, and about 30 of them are with their literacy instructor. And then the other support members of the team are kind of pushing into different locations. So what you're looking at now is a layout of one of the floors of our K1 building, our early years building. Our school is primarily composed of 3 buildings that are all 2 stories. And here, this is the downstairs of the K1 building. You can see, as Ms. Cartier was describing, that the rooms kind of open up into one open, flexible space. There's not a door or a wall dividing the rooms from this floor. So you can see into all of these spaces by standing in the center. So the way this looks during a core content time is that about 30 of the students are engaged in that math instruction. And so in room 1, which is on the top left of this graphic, maybe 15 of those students are working on a math lesson in Spanish with the certified math teacher at their enrolled grade level. So they're getting access to grade level mathematics instruction in that smaller group. The other students who are engaged in math instruction might be on the conversation stairs, working in small groups, in centers, on their individualized digital platform that we have called ExactPath, that has lessons that are based on that particular student's needs, based on an adaptive diagnostic assessment. And they're working with the support of a highly qualified paraeducator. Then the other half of the covey is engaged in that literacy instruction at this time. So in room 2, which is on the right side of your screen, maybe 10 to 15 of those students are working in a smaller group on a reading foundations lesson based on their diagnostic assessments that tell the educator their needs in reading foundations. And they're working there with that certified literacy teacher. Whereas the remaining students are engaged also in literacy instruction in the Messy Lab, which with the support of the teacher in residence that supports this covey. And during this literacy instruction, they might be engaged in our inquiry-based social centers, which involve writing and problem solving and collaboration and play and getting messy, hence the name, the Messy Lab. And again, this is just one example of during a core content time, how we might team and use our open learning environment to deepen learning for students. When we talk about distributed expertise, which is a core tenet of the next education workforce, a lot of times you hear us talk about subject area specialization or expertise in a particular content area. And that is certainly true at the Creighton Academy. As a dual language immersion school, each of our certified educators specializes in one content area, whether it's English language arts or mathematics. However, we also know that there are lots of other ways to distribute expertise on a team. So one way that we are starting to distribute expertise is through using a tool that you may be familiar with called the Clifton Strengths Finder. If you're not familiar, this is an assessment that you take as an individual to learn what your core strengths are as a leader, as a team member. And these include things like being a strong communicator, being strategic, valuing harmony and being able to bring that into situations. There's about 37 identified strengths in this assessment. So as an entire staff, we took this Clifton Strengths Finder assessment, and then we are using those results to determine what the strengths of our team members are, so we can lean into them and we can really capitalize on those strengths so that we're working from that place of strength instead of from the place of weakness. There are so many responsibilities that educators have. And so if there's one person who has a strength of communication and really enjoys that, they may be the person on the team that takes on the role of creating those newsletters, going home to families, or being the spokesperson at our staff-wide team meetings. Maybe the person who's got that strength of harmony takes on the role of facilitating meetings because they make sure that everybody's voice is heard and that everybody leaves the meeting feeling satisfied with the results. Again, we're just in the beginning stages of this, but this is another way that we are distributing expertise on our teams. A big part of teaming is making sure that there is enough time to collaborate. As a team, it is imperative to have that time. And so we prioritize common planning time in our schedule for our educators. So every single day, educators have 45 minutes of common planning time in their cubby. Also, several times a week, educators have individual planning time in addition to that common time. During their common planning time, that's typically unstructured time where cubbies can meet together to co-plan, to check in about particular students, to check in about their project-based learning units, and discuss ways that they intend to co-teach or procedures or things going on, the daily business of teaching, right? But then we also have structured time at least once a week where the educators meet together with me, the instructional coach, to plan, to look at data, and to determine appropriate co-teaching models based on the data for that content area. Also, at least monthly, we have time to meet kind of more formally together as a cubby to discuss particular student needs with our MTSS meetings and to talk more formally about cubby-wide procedures and things we might need to adapt. Additionally, on Wednesdays, we have an early release model. So we have 2 hours of time in our day to meet as an entire staff. And during that time, sometimes we will work together in content-specific groups that are across the cubby. So all of the teachers who teach language arts are able to work together and discuss vertical articulation and engagement strategies. And all of the mathematics teachers are able to get together and again, discuss instructional strategies and teaching in Spanish and what that looks like in the particular challenges that they are facing. And it also gives time for entire houses to meet together. So all of those K-1 educators can get together and discuss management strategies and receive professional development that's really targeted to the ages that they serve. During our professional learning that's more content-based, we often will look at a particular unit or lesson and decide on what co-teaching models would be most appropriate for our team. So for example, if I was working with Ms. Flores, who teaches 4th and 5th grade math, and the teacher in residence that works very closely with her, we may look at an upcoming 4th grade math lesson and decide that many of the students based on the data are in the same place. And so the best way to deepen learning is for them to plan a lesson together and each of them teach the same lesson in that parallel co-teaching model so that the students just get more individualized attention in their smaller groups. Or we may look at the data and see that there's a smaller group of students that's really struggling with this particular concept. And so Ms. Flores, as our master teacher, is going to work with that group to really provide them more targeted support, whereas the teacher in residence will have a chance to teach a larger group, but that's more on level or on track with that particular concept. Next, I would like to pass it over to our team, Ms. Klutz and Ms. Flores, who are going to talk to you more about how we deepen and personalize learning for our students. And Ms. Klutz is going to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Rodas. So here at the Creighton Academy, we really focus on deepening and personalizing our students' learning in many different ways. So some ways that we do that is we incorporate those inquiry and interest-based learning into our lessons. We also use that project-based learning throughout our lessons, and we have a designated time so we can really focus in with our students on getting through those PBL lessons. This is a great time for kids to develop those real-world problem-solving skills and solutions. They're collaborating with their peers and their teachers, which is a really great time of the day to see. This is one of their favorite parts of the day. We differentiate our lessons based on our students' needs and our interests. So having those strong relationships with our students, having a co-teacher to collaborate with about our students' needs and what we see was really helping and benefiting them has been super beneficial. And going into that, every teacher has a co-teacher that they work with and they share students with and they can collaborate with. We also make sure that we're broadening the outcomes of our students' mastery at their own self-directed pace, but that's also challenging and reflective to them. So every day, each grade band, which is also known as a house or a covey, is engaging in either social centers, STEM centers, or Genius Hour. So our K-1 kids are the ones that are engaging in those social centers. This is a structured playtime that's adapted from Tools of the Mind, if you're familiar with their studies. They create a play plan. So this play plan is where they engage with their peers as well as clean up their play materials. The teachers will take input from their students about how they want it to look. They'll illustrate a plan and set those expectations with their students before they're able to actually engage in that play. And as the year goes on, the plan's going to change. Students will start to engage in more of the writing about their plan themselves. And then at the end of that social center, they'll be able to have that whole group reflection and discussion about their play. Next, our second and third grade kids are engaging in those STEM centers. So similar to the social centers, but because the kids are older, they are more independent in their work and their reflection. So that's exactly how it's going to look. The centers are, of course, STEM aligned, and they're doing a lot of reflecting that is more independent, although they are still working with their peers and they're learning how to work, communicate, interact with groups in order to complete those specific tasks together as a group. Students will typically make the plan and then implement it by either exploring, creating, building, and then at the end of the center is when they're engaging in that written reflection as well as discussion. Next, in our fourth, fifth, and sixth grade learning environments, we have a class blocked out for our Genius Hour time. Genius Hour is exactly what it sounds like. It's a time in the day where students are able to become geniuses or experts on a topic of their choice that they want to research about. We really get to see the students' interests and passions outside of these of what they're learning in school, and they get to learn about topics that they also just want to become experts about. Maybe they are not experts in them yet, but they want to learn more and be able to share it with their peers. So at this age, students are already really independent in building their identity. So I love this time of day because it brings out the diversity in our learning environments. They're allowed to have choice and voice in that learning environment, and it's not limited. So after they choose that topic that they want to do their research about, they will start the research, start the note taking, and then they can start creating. The different projects I've seen have been so fun. They've created things like videos, websites, slideshows, posters, books about so many different topics of their choice. Students have researched sea animals, famous athletes, different holidays and their cultures. I've even seen projects about different planets in space. So this full cycle in Genius Hour of the researching, note-taking, and creating and then presenting takes students about 4 to 6 weeks. It totally depends on the student, their project, and what they're researching. We also are practicing with our students what good presenting skills look like and sound like, as well on how to give your peers constructive feedback. Now I would like to introduce to you my Covey co-teacher who teaches math and Spanish, Perla Flores, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about our project-based learning model.
Thank you, Ms. Klutz. Students participate in project-based learning 4 days a week. Project-based learning connects directly to science and social studies standards and supports students in developing collaborative and problem-solving skills. Units integrate ELA skills of reading comprehension, research, writing, speaking, and listening. Students learn background knowledge and have hands-on experiences to guide them through problem solving. Units typically last 4 weeks in the younger grades and closer to 8 weeks in the upper grades. The units are adapted from the curriculum dashboard. Some examples of project-based learning units include students in the early years, K-1, learning about community helpers at our school by interviewing staff members and creating puppet shows explaining their roles and responsibilities. Students in the intermediate years, 2nd and 3rd grade, learning about endangered animals through research and creating a plan to keep those animals safe. Students in the upper years, fourth and fifth grade, learning about gravity and force through research, and then designing the fastest car. As we continue to grow, we're moving towards project-based learning units that are more student-driven, more authentic, and interdisciplinary.
Through our literacy instruction, our 4th through 6th graders are learning through a workshop model for both the reading and writing time. So during Readers Workshop, the teachers are focusing on students forming skills on how to become good readers and what that looks like. And we base our learning around using those skills. Teachers practice reading comprehension skills with the students. And then during their independent reading time, the students are choosing books that matches both their interests as well as where they're at in their own personal reading level. This helps to make sure that those fluency and decoding skills aren't getting in the way of their comprehension of what they are reading. During our writers workshop time, our lessons are focused around authentic themes like creating fiction or nonfiction books, writing letters and reflections about a topic they're interested in or what we are engaging in at the time. The teachers are teaching students how to take a writing task that may be large and complex and break it down into smaller skills so that students are able to build those skills over time to complete a larger writing project. While they're doing this, the teachers are giving the students feedback in their writing, but so are their peers. So the peers will be giving each other feedback through a rubric or to-do list on the given expectations that's going to help them to be where they need to be in their writing. Also, all of the ELA teachers are taking letters, which is a 2-year science of reading training. The early and intermediate years are implementing and teaching those explicit and systematic phonemic awareness, phonics, and morphology lessons every single day in their teaching. All the students are working on those specific decoding skills and language comprehension skills in small groups with the teachers who are getting those trainings in these letter sessions.
Our math instruction opens with a multi-age targeted Spanish mini lesson and a daily number talk where students discuss various strategies to solve problems and build number sense and flexibility. Then students transition to working with math content through grade level concept development, math review, and centers. Math instruction is delivered entirely in Spanish using a dual language immersion model. And to leverage all of our educators on our Covey team, we often use various co-teaching approaches to differentiate for students, decrease group size, and provide collegial coaching opportunities for teachers. For broader outcomes, students use ExactPath, an adaptive, individualized digital program to learn foundational skills in reading, language arts, and mathematics at a self-directed pace that is at their learning level to attend to the students' learning needs. The students show mastery of these skills through digital lessons and assessments. They take quarterly diagnostics and benchmark assessments to show their growth in the areas of phonics, oral reading fluency, number sense, and writing. Students then demonstrate their mastery of concepts through performance-based assessments, either individually with educators or recorded through their digital portfolios. Students receive both narrative progress reports and report cards that share what specific strengths students have in each academic area, as well as their habits as learners. Students, teachers, and families meet quarterly to set goals for students' growth in the upcoming quarter. Students also receive standard-based report cards that share progress towards mastery of grade level standards, regardless of the skills students are working on at the time in the learning environment, in order to maintain that transparency with families and students. And I'm going to pass the ball back to Ms. Rodas.
Yes, I would love to talk with you more about specialization and advancement pathways at the Creighton Academy. So as you know, we've been talking about our teams and the various roles that we have on our teams, but now I'd like to highlight 2 critical roles at our campus, our lead teachers and our teachers in residence. Starting first with our lead teachers, really they play such a critical role at the Creighton Academy. We have at least one lead teacher per house and sometimes one lead teacher per cubby, just depending on the size of the group. And that lead teacher is responsible for really facilitating meetings and coming up with ideas for professional development and then communicating that to the leadership team. They often represent their team at staff meetings and on our team leaders committee. They are also mentors for our novice teachers or our first year teachers, and they provide them with additional support coming into this model of education and just as a first year educator in general. And then in turn, we as a leadership team provide those lead teachers with more support for that mentoring role, more training for how to be an effective mentor. Many of them are also mentors for our teachers in residence from our ASU Mary Fulton Teachers College partnership. Speaking of our teachers in residence, they play a huge and critical role on our campus. We are just so very fortunate to have so many teachers in residence on our campus, which really adds so much depth to our teams and to our students' learning experience. And it's also a really great place for teachers in residence to come and learn because, you know, in a traditional student teaching experience, you go into one classroom and you just really learn from one teacher, right? And so you see that one teacher's instructional strategies, that one teacher's classroom management strategies. But here at the Creighton Academy, because of our open learning environment and because of our teaming structures, our teachers and residents get to really see so many teachers in action and plan with many different teachers throughout their experience, which really broadens their capacity as educators. They also have the opportunity to use all of the 6 co-teaching models throughout their time with us and increase their responsibility over time. So they may start out observing and sitting in on planning meetings and really listening and absorbing it all, but very quickly they began taking on small groups throughout the day, taking on parallel teaching opportunities throughout their core content time with their mentor teachers, and even teaching whole group lessons and fully taking over their homeroom class over time. Ms. Cartier?
Yes, so I'd love to close us out and talk about the future of the Creighton Academy. So as we move into our next years, our superintendent, as you can imagine, this is a really difficult model, and to really realize this vision, it takes a lot of tears. And so she talks me off the ledge daily. And one day she said, relax, this is going to take 7 years, but I'm giving myself 4 to truly realize our vision. And as we look at the future, we want to build the capacity and expertise of all of our teachers and all of our staff members. We will continue to expand our programs and increase our enrollment. And we will continue to co-construct this school by seeking the input of our staff, our families, and students so that we can truly create adventurous thinkers, collaborative learners, and kind-hearted leaders at the Creighton Academy. And so that is our presentation today. I'd love to throw it to you and ask you for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and open it up for questions.
And Katie, there was one question from earlier about the play model that was referenced from Janessa. If you can give any more information or provide a link to that.
Absolutely. Let me tell you a little bit more about that program. It's from a curriculum called Tools of the Mind. Tools of the Mind is a Vygotskian approach, and it was developed for preschoolers through kindergartners. The entire goal is self-regulation in students. So knowing that our really early childhood kiddos, what they want to do is go to the kitchen center and then run over to the art center and then run over to this center. And we truly want to not only enhance the literacy skills of our students, but also the imaginative play of them and the self-regulation. So they really create play plans. So they start by in whole group instruction, they will have the teacher model through a morning message what a play plan might look like. So they don't say things like, I'm going to the kitchen today. We really want to enhance their sentence structure and their imaginative play by saying things like, I'm going to the barber shop and I am going to cut 3 people's hair today. And of course, you can imagine in kindergarten on those first days, it doesn't look like that. So they learn things about drawing pictures and then drawing lines. And then they start with early literacy skills, like they may only include the scribbling on the lines at first, and that's okay. And then they start the next piece and they might include the first letters of the words until we're progressing into actually writing sentences and then executing those plans in the actual centers. And I think that Mrs. Rodas included a link to the Tools of the Mind curriculum, so for more information.
So if anyone has any other questions, if you want to just go ahead and unmute and ask your questions to anyone of the team.
I have a question if no one else does. Thank you again for sharing all of that, and congrats on what you're trying and doing. It's really great. I appreciate it. The going back to the, I don't know, it was a Venn diagram. It was like the overlapping coveys, that slide with all the different educators in there. How many of those teachers were teachers of record, like full-time teachers of record, across that diagram? And then, I'm just thinking about like bringing along teachers that may have played a more traditional one teacher, one classroom role in the past and bringing them into a model like this. Like, is there a succinct way to summarize, like, what are the primary differences between like what their job might have looked like in that old model and what their job would look like in this newer approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as a smaller school, we have essentially like 10 homerooms. So there are 10 certified homeroom teachers. Each certified homeroom teacher has on their class roster about 25 to 30 kiddos, as you would typically see anywhere, right? And those students are in 2 different grade levels, though. But this is not a combination class approach, right? It's a multi-age class approach. But on their roster, they see those students. And then like a departmentalized middle school might see on their roster, they'll see the students from their homeroom and then from their partner's homeroom as well, because they'll teach throughout the day, they'll teach two sections of their core content. So if they're the literacy teacher, they teach all of those students their English language arts block in the morning, and then they teach the other students English language arts in the afternoon, while the math teacher is doing the same for the opposite group in Spanish. Things that are different from like a traditional departmentalized approach are all of those inquiry-based times throughout our day, like project-based learning, social centers, STEM centers, genius hours. Those are all happening in a more fluid, multi-age, cross-covey sort of style. So then that's where our open learning environment really shines, because the teachers are able to work more flexibly than you can in like that traditional closed door classroom. But the biggest difference I would say for a homeroom teacher is to wrap their brain around in coming into this model is when you team, you are not just responsible for your own little, group of 30 kids, and you're responsible for everything that happens to them and developing all the procedures and routines and kind of the safety of knowing you're in control of everything and the pressure of knowing you're in charge of everything. You're sharing the control and you're sharing the responsibility with your team. So the 2 certified teachers are like the ones that are primarily in charge of directing all of the conversation, but all of those support people we mentioned, paraeducators, teachers in residence, community educators, they come and participate in that meeting, and they contribute as well to, hey, I'm noticing that this procedure is not working here, or I'm noticing these particular kiddos are struggling here and I have an idea. So you're opening the door for more voices, which is awesome and challenging. And so we really have to dedicate time for that collaboration and spend a lot of time, especially in the beginning of the year, but throughout the year, in community building as a staff. You know, we know that we need to do that for our students, and especially in this kind of model, you need to do that as a staff so that you continue to make decisions for your students in a healthy way where all voices are represented. I hope that answers your question. If not, please let me know and I can clarify more.
Super helpful. I appreciate it.
It looks like we had another question in the chat. How might you leverage what's working from this learning environment? So I think if I were to, let's say, go into a typical school and try and use some of the pieces of our learning environment, knowing that you're not going to knock down walls immediately and things like that, I think I would just start working with changing the way we think about education, changing the thought process behind what kids need for the future and how they will be interacting, and truly design things backwards from there. So for example, that typical model of kids sitting in rows and a teacher lecturing. I mean, we don't even use that word lecture ever in our school. As someone came in the other day and they said, oh, is this where you do most of your lecturing? And I almost like, I was taken aback. I was like, lecture? What is that? But truly, I mean, our lessons are mini lessons. When we use the direct instruction model, it is for a very short period of time to get information across to kids, and then they are working with it and collaborating with their peers and chewing on it. And then our teachers are meeting them where they are and working with them on an individual or a small group basis. And I think that's where I might start, leveraging some of the pieces of this model, and then those co-teaching models and methodologies that ASU puts out so beautifully. I think there's a graphic that ASU puts out for the co-teaching models, that parallel teaching and the one teacher, and then one whole group teacher, one small group teacher. So those might be some of the places that I'd start. How is the classroom management with this environment? Such an excellent question, and probably the most important question. We know that classroom management is one of the reasons that teachers will quit the profession within the first 2 years, the profession, not just that school. And so if we cannot get them some excellent classroom management strategies, then it's going to be really difficult. So we have systems in place. So I'm going to let Sam talk about our new teacher program and some of those basic methodologies, and then what it looks like and how our actual environment really lends itself to some good classroom management.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of the first piece is that we realized quite quickly that we needed to have some school-wide things that were common because of our open learning environment. It was really important to have consistency among the cubbies. And so I'm going to try to be super fast in this 1 minute. So we worked together to really develop some like consistent procedures like voice levels, and making sure that we knew at what times of the day we could have a more loud environment and what time students were really engaged in more independent projects and we needed things to be quieter so that students could focus. So we developed those procedures as a whole school team. And then the way that our teachers get coaching and training in those strategies is through individualized coaching with me, the instructional coach, especially in their first year, coaching with their mentor teacher. We have a new teacher induction group that meets at least monthly and in the beginning of the year more often to practice those strategies, look at videos, etc. And then also we do a lot of collegial coaching. You can imagine with the open learning environment, you see people teaching all of the time just by walking to go get your lunch. So it's a really great way for them to see other effective classroom management strategies. The last thing I'll say about this is that in an environment that is as flexible as ours is, we learned super quickly that you have to be even more intentional about your procedures and your routines, and even tighter with those than you might think. It's not a free-for-all. We have very clear systems for students about what their levels of autonomy are and what that means And then the teachers, again, are super consistent with their routines and their procedures, and that hierarchy of consequences for students who are not able to work within that system at that time. And then, of course, we really focus on the social emotional needs of our kiddos as well. I know we're out of time.
Well said.
I also know that Ms. Cartier put her email in the chat, so please feel free to contact us with further questions.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.